The Xindi warships blasted through the skies above the capital, engines roaring with the arrogance of unrivaled power. Countless alien races watched, hearts pounding, as the ruthless Emperor Pollux strode onto the dais of the annual tribute summit. He surveyed the trembling crowd of subjugated civilizations with a sneer. "This year's tribute is doubled," Pollux declared, his voice booming through the assembly hall. "Any world that refuses will be annihilated." Dread silenced the chamber. The Xindi's cruelty was legendary. No one dared defy them. Except for one man. "Humanity will never submit to tyrants," Ambassador Isaac Collins called out, rising from his seat. Gasps echoed as he locked eyes with Pollux. "We don't recognize your authority. Free people shouldn't have to pay tribute to oppressors." Pollux's face contorted with rage. "Seize him!" he bellowed. Guards charged. Chaos erupted. Panicked delegates fled. Pollux's loyal vassals surged forward as Collins grappled with the guards. The human ambassador broke free just long enough to slap a device on his wrist. He vanished in a flash of light. News spread like wildfire. Some thought humanity was doomed, that Collins's defiance was suicidal. Others dared to hope this might be the first spark of rebellion. Regardless, one thing was certain as the tribute summit devolved into a frenzy of military orders and hurried battle plans. The Xindi's grip on the galaxy had been openly challenged, and they would not let such an insult stand. The fragile galactic balance teetered on a knife's edge between liberation and destruction. Fleets mustered, armies gathered, the Xindi war machine awoke with a vengeance to crush humanity's uprising. All eyes turned towards Earth, waiting with bated breath to see if human courage would triumph, or if the Xindi would make a brutal example of any species that dared to dream of freedom. The retribution was swift and brutal. Emperor Pollux's fury echoed through the galaxy as he dispatched a massive armada under the command of his most feared general, Zorkul. The Xindi ships tore through hyperspace, engines howling with the promise of vengeance, their sights set on the human colony of Rigel. But as the fleet dropped out of warp above the blue-green world, their sensors were met with an impossible sight. The human ships hung in perfect formation, a gleaming wall of metal filled with weaponry. At the center of the defensive line was the Indomitable, the flagship of Admiral Kira Sato. "Fire the EMP!" Sato barked. A pulse of crackling energy burst from the Indomitable, washing over the Xindi fleet. Consoles went dark, engines sputtered and died. The invaders hung helpless, drifting in the void. Sato's lips curled into a predatory grin. "All ships engage at will." The human fleet surged forward, energy shields shimmering. Lances of searing light sliced through Xindi hulls like a scalpel through flesh. The Indomitable danced through the enemy formation, its advanced weaponry making a mockery of the once feared warships. Zorkul pounded his fist on the dormant controls of his crippled vessel, bellowing in frustration as ship after ship vanished in blossoms of flame. In a matter of minutes, the mighty Xindi armada was reduced to a field of shattered debris. News of the stunning victory spread like a wildfire of hope. On a dozen subjugated worlds, downtrodden populations looked to the skies with newfound defiance. If the humans could stand against the Xindi, perhaps they too could throw off the yoke of oppression. Emperor Pollux raged in his throne room as reports flooded in of unrest and open talk of rebellion. The Xindi's aura of invincibility had been shattered by a single battle. He thumped his hand on the armrest, the adamantium alloy cracking under the force of his anger. "If they want war, then war they shall have," Pollux snarled. "Crush them, grind their colonies to dust, leave no human alive." Zorkul rallied the tattered remnants of his fleet, reinforced by the full might of the Empire. Thousands of ships poured from Xindi space, each filled with enough firepower to reduce a world to cinders. Their target, New Terra. The skies above the colony burned as Xindi ships clashed with the entrenched human defenders. Lances of superheated plasma crisscrossed the void, slicing through shields and hulls alike. Captain Marcus Wright led his squadron of Ajax fighters in a dizzying dance of death, bobbing and weaving through the enemy fire. His targeting computer tracked a dozen targets at once, prioritizing the Cindy frigates attempting to land troop transports. "Fox 3! Fox 3!" Wright called out, missiles leaping from his fighters' racks. Half a dozen Xindi landing ships vanished in blossoms of fire before their troops could set foot on New Terra's soil. On the ground, Sergeant John Stone Hawkins rallied his squad of Marines as Xindi war machines marched through the rubble-strewn streets. "Hold the line!" he bellowed, his voice booming from his power armor's external speakers. A Xindi mech, its chitinous armor still smoldering from a previous engagement, swiveled its plasma cannon towards Hawkins's position. The Marine sergeant charged forward, leaping over the twisted remains of a hover tank. His armor's jump jets flared, propelling him onto the machine's back. Hawkins jammed his rifle into a gap in the mech's armor, aimed for the glowing power core, and squeezed the trigger. The machine shuddered and collapsed, its chest exploding outward in a shower of sparks and shrapnel. Hawkins rode the wreckage to the ground, already scanning for his next target. Yet for all their courage and technological might, the humans could not be everywhere at once. Zexrin, the Shadowblade's master assassin, slipped through the chaos cloaked in an adaptive camouflage field. She vaulted over the perimeter fence of the human command post, her monomolecular blades thirsting for blood. But as she approached the command bunker, a shimmering net of energy encased her. Isaac Collins stepped from the shadows, a nullifier field generator in his hand. Zexrin's camouflage flickered and died, exposing her to the sights of a dozen Spectre team operatives. Undeterred, the assassin lunged for Collins, her blades flashing in the dim light. Collins sidestepped the strike, his own monofilament whip uncoiling from his gauntlet. The two engaged in a lethal dance, parrying and thrusting in a whirlwind of glinting metal under the glow of the burning city. Even as humanity held the line, new opportunities emerged from the chaos. Admiral Sato met in secret with Lyrax diplomats aboard the Indomitable, their delicate webbed fingers tapping the glowing controls of a holoprojector. "Your weapons are impressive," the lead Lyrax said, "but they are no match for the full might of the Empire. You need an edge." The projection shifted, displaying schematics for propulsion systems and particle cannons far beyond anything humanity had developed. "And what would you ask in return?" Sato inquired, leaning forward intently. The Lyrax's gills fluttered in the human ship's carefully humidified air. "Protection, a chance to live free of the Cindy's cruelty." Sato nodded. "Then we have an agreement." Similar deals were struck with the Vorn and the Krelar, each bringing their unique talents and technologies to the table. With these new allies and the growing unrest within the Empire, humanity dared to dream of a future free from Xindi oppression. Plans were drawn up, strategies formulated. The Indomitable's reactors surged with newfound power as its warp drive was overhauled with Lyrax technology. Admiral Sato stood on the bridge, watching the holographic star map that stretched before her. One by one, the systems of the Xindi Empire blinked from red to blue as uprising after uprising toppled the local governors. Sato reached out, tracing a path through the stars with her finger. A path that led straight to the heart of the Xindi Empire itself. She turned to her crew, steel in her eyes. "Plot a course for the Emperor's throne world. It's time to bring this war to Pollux' doorstep." The Indomitable's engines pulsed with newfound power as it sliced through the fabric of space. Admiral Sato stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the swirling vortex of hyperspace. A chime from her wristcom broke the tense silence. "Admiral, we've received an urgent transmission from Earth Command," her aide reported. "They're requesting your presence in the secure briefing room." Moments later, Sato found herself face-to-face with a holographic projection of General Hawthorne. The grizzled veteran's expression was grim. "We're initiating Operation Shadow Strike," Hawthorne announced without preamble, "a joint human-alien spec ops team to hit the Xindi where it hurts." Sato's eyebrows raised. "Who's leading this team?" "Commander Jackson Dare," Hawthorne replied. "He's assembled a crack squad. Zexrin, the Shadowblade defector, Kavin, a Lyrax tech wizard, and Rogar, a Vorn berserker." The hologram flickered, replaced by schematics of a massive orbital structure. Their first target, the Xindi shipyards at Kaldor. Sato leaned forward, studying the defenses. Those aren't going to be easy to crack. That's why we're sending in the best, Hawthorne said. Dare has the codes and the tech. They'll get it done. The briefing continued, outlining the audacious plan. As Sato listened, a mix of hope and trepidation filled her. This could turn the tide of the war or end in disaster. Thousands of light years away, Commander Dare's team ghosted through the shadows of Kaldor's outer perimeter. Zexrin moved with liquid grace, her adaptive camouflage rendering her nearly invisible. Kvin's fingers danced across a holographic interface, bypassing security protocols with ease. "We're in," Kvin whispered, his gills fluttering with excitement. Dare nodded. "Plant the charges. Rogar, watch our six." The Vorn warrior grunted, hefting a massive plasma cannon. His four eyes scanned the corridor, alert for any sign of danger. They worked with practiced efficiency, each member of the team in perfect sync. Explosives were strategically placed throughout the shipyards, targeting key structural points and power nodes. As they reached the final placement, alarms suddenly blared. "We've been made!" Zexrin hissed. "Exfil Route Gamma," Dare ordered. "Move!" The team sprinted through twisting corridors, Shindy security forces hot on their heels. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the walls. Rogar spun, his cannon roaring to life. The pursuing Xindi were cut down in a hail of superheated projectiles. 10 seconds to detonation," Kvin called out. They burst onto a landing pad, their stealth shuttle waiting. As the hatch sealed behind them, the shipyards erupted in a chain of devastating explosions. The shuttle rocketed away from the inferno, cloaking field engaged. Dare allowed himself a grim smile as he watched the destruction through the viewscreen. "One down," he said. "Next stop, the Nexus." The audacious assault on the Xindi's main supply hub was even more harrowing. Dare led his team on a high-risk spacewalk, magnetic boots barely keeping them anchored to the station's hull as they avoided sentry drones and defense turrets. Inside, they fought a running battle through crowded corridors, their advance a blur of plasma fire and brutal hand-to-hand combat. Kvin's hacking skills proved invaluable, locking down entire sections and turning the station's own defenses against its defenders. In the central control core, Zexrin's blades flashed as she dueled with the station's security chief. Dare and Rogar provided covering fire, keeping waves of reinforcements at bay, while Kvin worked feverishly to overload the reactor. "It's done!" Kvin shouted. "We have 5 minutes before this place goes critical!" They fought their way back to their insertion point, sealing bulkheads behind them to slow pursuit. With seconds to spare, they launched themselves into space, their suits' thrusters carrying them to the waiting extraction ship. The Nexus detonated in a silent flash of light, leaving behind only a rapidly expanding debris field. Dare's team watched in awe as the symbol of Xindi logistical might vanished into the void. News of these victories spread like wildfire. On a dozen worlds, the oppressed masses rose up against their Shindy overlords. Dare's team found themselves deployed again and again, supporting uprisings and sabotaging Imperial strongholds. But even as the Xindi Empire reeled from these blows, a new thread entered the tapestry of galactic conflict. On the dead world of Xerxes Prime, Dr. Lena Soren's archaeological team made a discovery that would change everything. "By the stars," Soren breathed, brushing dust from an ancient inscription. "Kvin, are you seeing this?" The Lyrax scientist's eyes widened as he scanned the glyphs. "It can't be," he whispered. "The Nexus Core? But that's just a legend." Soren shook her head. "Not anymore. And if I'm reading this correctly, whoever controls it could dominate the entire galaxy." She reached for her comm unit, knowing that this discovery would set in motion events that could reshape the course of the war, and perhaps the fate of all sentient life. The ancient ruins of Xerxes Prime trembled as the first waves of the disabling pulse washed over the battlefield. Weapons sputtered and died, leaving both human and Xindi forces momentarily stunned. In the eerie silence that followed, the clash of metal on chitin rang out as soldiers on both sides drew melee weapons. Colonel Jackson Dare's exo-armor whirred and clicked as its systems rebooted. He hefted his vibroblade, scanning the chaos erupting around him. Through the settling dust, a massive figure emerged, Krax, the Kree-lock berserker. The Xindi warrior's mandibles clicked in anticipation. Your technology fails you, human. Now we fight as nature intended. Dare's lips curled into a grim smile. Bring it on, big guy. Krax charged, his enormous frame belying his speed. Dare barely managed to sidestep the initial rush, his vibroblade scoring a glancing blow across the Xindi's carapace. The Colonel's enhanced reflexes kept him one step ahead, but each thunderous blow from Krax sent shockwaves through his armor. Nearby, Dr. Lena Soren ducked into a narrow passageway, narrowly avoiding a spray of acid from a Xindi foot soldier's organic pistol. Her hand brushed against a hidden panel, and a section of wall slid away, revealing a pristine chamber untouched by the battle. By the stars, she breathed, taking in the array of holographic displays and data crystals. Her eyes widened as she deciphered the ancient script. This is it, the resting place of the Nexus Core. As Soren frantically downloaded and decrypted the Xerxian research logs, the duel between Dare and Krax reached its crescendo. The Colonel's armor sparked and smoked, pushed to its limits. With a roar of defiance, Dare executed a lightning-fast feint, drawing Krax off balance. In that split second of vulnerability, Dare's vibroblade found its mark, piercing a weak point in the Xindi's armor. Krax stumbled backward, green ichor oozing from the wound. Impossible, he growled, before collapsing to the ground. Across the ruins, another deadly dance played out. Isaac Collins and General Zor Kul circled each other, their weapons locked in a stalemate. Your empire is built on lies and oppression, Collins spat, parrying a vicious strike from Zor Kul's energy blade. The Xindi general's compound eyes gleamed with contempt. And your precious freedom is an illusion. Only through strength and order can a species truly evolve. Their ideological clash manifested in a blur of strikes and counterstrikes, neither able to gain the upper hand. Just as it seemed Spectre Team would be overwhelmed by the Xindi's superior numbers, a familiar voice crackled over the comms. Cavalry's here, boys and girls. Zexrin materialized from her cloaking field, leading a contingent of Lyrax and Krelar rebels. The tide of battle shifted as the fresh reinforcements tore into the Xindi's flank. Fall back to the central chamber, Dare ordered, helping a wounded teammate to his feet. We need to secure whatever Soren's found. As the human forces retreated to more defensible ground, the sky above lit up with new energy signatures. Admiral Sato's voice boomed across all frequencies. This is the TSS Indomitable. Xindi vessels, stand down or be destroyed. The Imperial ships scattered, their blockades shattered by the sudden arrival of the human fleet. On the ground, the remaining Xindi troops found themselves caught between orbital bombardment and the advancing rebel forces. In the relative calm of the hidden chamber, Dr. Soren emerged from her work, her face pale. I've decoded the Xerxian logs, she announced to the assembled team leaders. The Nexus Core, it's real, and it's more powerful than we could have imagined. But there's a catch. She brought up a holographic display showing a massive stellar nursery. It needs to be recharged using the energy released during star formation, and there's only one place in the sector with enough new stars to do the job. The Cygnus Rift. Colin's eyes narrowed. Then that's where we're headed. We can't let the Xindi get their hands on that kind of power. As if in response to his words, long-range sensors lit up with multiple contacts. General Zor Kul, having escaped the rout on Xerxes Prime, had gathered the remaining Imperial fleet for one desperate push. Admiral Sato's voice crackled over the comms once more. All ships, prepare for immediate jump to the Cygnus Rift. This is going to be one hell of a fight. As the Allied fleet made ready to depart, tension hung heavy in the air. The race for the Nexus Core had begun in earnest, and the fate of the stars hung in the balance. The battle for the Cygnus Rift erupted in a fury of plasma fire and quantum torpedoes. Admiral Sato's fleet clashed with General Zor Kul's Imperial Armada, their ships dancing a deadly waltz amidst newborn stars. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Sato barked orders as tactical displays flashed red. Concentrate fire on their flagship. We can't let them reach the core. Explosions blossomed in the void as human and Xindi vessels traded blows. The Indomitable shuddered under a barrage of enemy fire, its shields flickering. "Admiral," a sensor officer called out, "we've detected a Xindi boarding party." Sato's eyes narrowed. "Seal all bulkheads. Dispatch security teams." Her words were cut short as the bridge doors exploded inward. Through the smoke strode General Zor Kul, flanked by elite Xindi warriors. "Your fleet dies today, human," Zor Kul snarled, mandibles clicking. Sato drew her sidearm. "Not before you do." The bridge erupted in close-quarters combat. Officers grappled with Xindi soldiers as Sato and Zor Kul circled each other. "The core will be ours," Zor Kul hissed, his energy blade humming to life. Sato fired, her shots deflected by the Xindi's personal shield. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." They clashed in a blur of steel and energy. Sato's human reflexes were pushed to their limit against Zor Kul's inhuman strength. A deafening explosion rocked the ship. Alarms blared as a junior officer shouted, "Admiral, they've breached the reactor core!" Sato's face hardened. She knew what had to be done. With a feint, she created an opening and drove her combat knife into a gap in Zor Kul's armor. The general roared in pain, staggering back. Sato slammed her palm on the emergency lockdown panel. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing the bridge. "What are you doing?" Zor Kul snarled. Sato's voice was steel. "Ensuring you never get the core." She keyed in the self-destruct sequence. The computer's cool voice rang out. "Warning, reactor overload initiated. 5 minutes to detonation." Zor Kul's compound eyes widened in realization. "You're mad." "No," Sato replied. "I'm ensuring the future of the galaxy." Outside, the battle raged on. On the Alliance flagship, Isaac Collins watched in horror as the Indomitable's reactor went critical. "Get the Admiral out of there," he shouted. But it was too late. The Indomitable erupted in a blinding flash, taking Sato, Zor Kul, and the secrets of the core with it. In the aftermath, the Xindi fleet scattered. Leaderless and outgunned, Imperial ships jumped to light speed or surrendered. Collins stood on the bridge, his victory hollow. The cost had been too high. A comm officer approached. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from a dozen worlds. They're declaring independence from the Empire." Collins nodded, his voice heavy. Tell them the Alliance stands ready to assist in their transition to freedom." As the reports flooded in, of Xindi garrisons being overthrown, of celebrations in the streets of liberated worlds, Collins couldn't shake the weight of what had been lost. The Nexus core was secure, but at what price? He gazed out at the starfield, knowing that the real work was just beginning. The galaxy was entering a new age, fraught with both promise and peril, and humanity would be at its center, for better or worse. "Set a course for Earth," Collins ordered. "We have a federation to build."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.